players step forward. And of course, it was a sad press conference as well, because they acknowledged the circumstances really weren't the kind of circumstances that they were hoping. But there is a different tone that they are going to try to rebuild this team. They're going to try to be optimistic.
So they're sticking around. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is
they're sticking around. They're going to be here.
Okay.
They're going to be here at least for a year.
Okay. Suzanne Malvo, thank you very much. Galen Clavio is an Indiana University senior. Galen hosts a sports show on the school's radio station, WIUS. So what do you say? What are the kids saying? Galen, this a bad thing or a good thing about Bobby Knight getting fired?
Well, I think the vast majority of students, Geraldo, are saying this is a bad thing. Right now, the feeling on campus is, I would say, a mix of sadness and outrage. Sadness because Bob Knight is gone. He's been fired by the university, and really there's no chance of him coming back. And I think the outrage comes in from the way that most of the students feel the administration has mishandled the firing of Bob Knight.
Well, I tell you one thing, Galen Clavio sounds to me like he's going to be quite the professional broadcaster when his time comes. But let me ask you, Galen, now with your student radio station, you presumably have the pulse of the student body. Are things calming down a little bit since the weekend?
Well, we saw the protests on Sunday, and I think that was kind of an outcropping of the great shock and surprise that the students felt waking up on Sunday morning and finding out that Coach Knight was being fired. You have seen that calm down a bit. Tempers are starting to be assuaded. Right now, there's this sense of regret and loss, I think, coming in. Now, what happens tomorrow when Coach Knight addresses the students, that remains to be seen. But right now, I think people are just calming down. They're reflecting on the times that they've watched the basketball program and watched Coach Knight work. And I think really there's a real sense of loss.
But let me ask you this. He's not the kind of guy with a following potent enough to lead a student general strike or something like that, is he?
Well, I don't think that was ever an issue. I mean, Coach Knight has always been about academics. His basketball team has one of the highest graduation rates in the history of college basketball. I don't think that Knight would ever want a general strike. However, what you're seeing is not so much Knight leading the charge of the students. What you're seeing is the students taking a stand and saying that the administration has really dealt with this entire situation in a very wrong way.
Well, that remains to be seen. Maybe they should have acted sooner. But listen, I'm not here to debate you, Galen. We got plenty of people here to do that. Let me just say that one person we do not have is Chris Simpson. Chris is the spokesman for Indiana University. He was addressed by Bobby Knight in his ESPN interview this evening. He was booked to appear on the program, promised us they'd be here. An hour ago, Simpson canceled after seeing Knight's interview on ESPN, saying that he had nothing to add. That is a very odd decision, it seems to me. And, you know, it seems to indicate also that IU doesn't have the courage to stand up for its own policies. Anyway, John Feinstein is a top-notch sports writer. He's a commentator who once found himself on the wrong side of Bob Knight's rap. What happened in your encounter with Coach Knight?
Well, Geraldo, I've been on the wrong side of Bob Knight's wrath on a number of occasions.
Oh, wow.
But the instance that's
You're still standing, though, John.
I'm sitting, actually. But the instance that came up in the last few days in light of this incident with Kent Harvey last Thursday, when I first heard about it on Friday, it had a ring of truth for me, because in 1986, when I was researching a season on the brink, and I spent the entire season with Bob Knight and his team, we were walking out of breakfast one morning on a road trip, and someone walking with me said, "So what are you going to do all day?" And Bob was walking a few steps ahead of me at that point, and I said to this guy, "Well, I'm going to do what I do every day. I'm just going to follow Knight around." At which point Bob whirled around and came back at me with a finger in my chest saying, you know, "How dare you call me Knight? You're almost 20 years younger than me. Show me more respect than that." There were a few profanities sprinkled in. And so when I heard that he had kind of gone off over this kid saying, "What's up, Knight?" It rang true to me, because I hadn't even been speaking to Bob when he responded as viscerally as he did 14 years ago.
Werner Wolf, what is it with the guy that he's got such a hair trigger? I mean, is he dysfunctional, or, you know, did someone push him around when he was a kid? I mean, you can call me Geraldo. I won't go ballistic.
Geraldo, I think the bottom line is Bobby Knight, his whole life, he's felt that the rules that are around do not apply to him. Different set of rules for him, rules for everybody, like ourselves, everybody else. No, they don't apply to him. I thought it was interesting when he said a couple of things. Number one, he said, you know, I've had other administrators here before, and I got along with them. I think what he was really saying is those other guys let him get away with the same stuff. That's why he got along with them. The bottom line, though, is this is very clear. I don't think there's a mystery here. He knew the rules he was operating under. He agreed to those rules. He broke the rules. Now, in his mind, maybe he thought, Geraldo, I can do it again. I'm bigger than these rules. Well, I say hooray for Indiana. I mean, they had us take a stand sometime. Of course, the hypocrisy of it all is, here Knight hasn't won an NCAA championship since 1987. I guarantee you, if he had been in the finals the last 5 years, he'd still be there, even with what's going on.
I think you're, tragically, Werner, as you often are, Mr. Let's Go to the Videotape, I think you're right on. Let me go to Bill Saporito, the senior editor, Time Magazine for Business and Sports, or the Business of Sports. Was it long overdue? Was it the straw that broke the camel's back? Or did they finally have a situation where, after voicing the zero-tolerance policy to a guy who really has been nutty in many cases, brilliant but nutty, not unlike many of us, I guess, but did they finally paint themselves in a corner where they had no choice but to fire the guy?
Well, let's see. A faculty member at a large university strikes a student and gets away with it. Well, how many places does that happen? If somebody from the physics department hits a student, do they hang around for another couple of years? I don't think so. So there was more than enough evidence to get rid of this guy a while ago. And I think our student journalist was correct when he said the university bungled it. They did. They should have gotten rid of this man a long time ago when they had the opportunity and had ample opportunity.
I don't know, Galen. He looks to me like, having had my share of him. He looks like a ballroom bully. What am I missing?
Well, Geraldo, it seems to me that there's a real problem with definition here. What is zero tolerance?
But that sounds like a more complicated question you raised than the one I asked, but I will give you ample opportunity to answer it. But I've got to take a quick commercial break. You'll learn about that when you get inside.